Alright, so I'm going to do a review of another comic I finally finished reading that I got from MegaCon, and this is Victorian Undead 2, Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula. Now, this is the second story in the Victorian Undead series by Ian Eddington. The first one was Sherlock Holmes versus Zombies, which the whole story for that was Sherlock Holmes, Moriarty came back from the dead and released a zombie apocalypse on in about 18th century London. So it was pretty good. I heard really good things about it, but I never was able to read it. And this is the sequel, which delves with obviously Sherlock Holmes fighting Dracula. This also contains a special story of Sherlock Holmes and Watson encountering Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I'll get a little into that in a second. But the main story itself is pretty good. It's a lot. It takes a different take on Dracula and what he's doing here in what he's doing in London. This also is a different time period, where in the book it's set in 1897. In here, this is 1900. This is the year 1900. So yeah, they've just entered the next century, and whereas in the original Dracula novel, it's set in, I believe, 1896 or 1897. So it was the dawning of a new age. This is like right at the start. And what happens is that Sherlock Holmes and Watson are tasked with the case of discovering what happened to the crew of the Demeter. And of course, if you know Dracula, the Demeter is the ship that Dracula came upon. So they quickly discover that Dracula is in England, and his whole thing is that he actually wants to rebuild a vampire empire. Yeah, vampire empire in England. He wants to make England, the United Kingdom, a new empire for him to rule over. And yeah, they also come across Watson and Holmes come across the intrepid group that are already hunting Dracula. But here's the thing: we meet Dr. Van Helsing, we meet Jonathan Harker, and we meet several other characters from the book. And here's the thing: it's a little different from the story than in the novel. It takes a different approach. Whereas in here, Dracula did in turn, he did in fact do the whole thing. He did capture Jonathan Harker and make him sign over those multiple, what was the word I'm looking for? Documents to sign over Carfax Abbey and a few other things. Difference being is that what happens. First being is that, what was I looking for? What was I looking to say? First being is that, yes, Dracula did in fact turn Lucy and Mina into vampires, but here's the thing. While Lucy became a servant of Dracula, Mina killed herself. She became a vampire and couldn't deal with it and instead committed suicide. And there's several character deaths, and even one of the characters, Holmwood, is working for Dracula. And, yeah. Now, the big thing is that Abraham Van Helsing is this very boisterous, he's this very angry character, and he doesn't care for Holmes' tact. And he just says, we need to go in there guns blazing and fight on. And we even get some major character development with Quincy Morris, another character and a suitor for Lucy. And you can clearly tell in this book that there was meant to be a trilogy here. And from what I understand is that what was going to happen in the third book was that it was going to focus on Sherlock Holmes versus Frankenstein. Yeah, it was going to be Sherlock Holmes and Frankenstein, and also Lucy was going to appear because she doesn't appear again in this book. She shows up and attacks the group with Dracula's three brides. But yeah, after they manage to kill Dracula's three brides, she manages to run off. And get away. And also, Holmes kind of, at the end of the whole story, he does kind of make this assumption that, yeah, even though we won this battle, it doesn't mean, I feel like England is in peril of more monsters in the new century. And again, if I remember reading some stuff, that the third book was going to be Sherlock Holmes against Dr. Frankenstein in the year in the dawning of World War I, if I'm not mistaken. And also Lucy was going to appear there as well. But yeah, the story itself is it's more mystery driven. And there is, of course, the supernatural stuff, and it does have some ties to the zombie apocalypse that happened in London, and it's called The Terror of London. But it's handled very well. I think it's handled very well, and you don't need to. I think you can pick up this and read it without needing to read the first story of Sherlock Holmes versus zombies. Yeah, I think you can pretty much read this without needing to read Sherlock Holmes versus zombies. I mean, there is some stuff in there that, it does harken back to it, but for the most part, it does kind of explain, yeah, there was a zombie apocalypse, and Britain is learning to move forward with their lives, and that's all you really need to know. So it does, and it is it is very Dracula-centric, but here's the thing. Dracula and Sherlock Holmes don't really fight. It's more like Holmes and Holmes and Watson teaming up with Abraham Van Helsing and going on the trail for Dracula, because they don't really, Holmes and Dracula don't really meet and fight until the final issue, when Dracula lays siege to Buckingham Palace, and even then it's a very short fight. By then, but again, it's more like the chase, and it is really good. Don't get me wrong; it is really good of seeing these two classic literary characters go head to head in this kind of matchup. The artwork is very well done. I do like, again, how Sherlock Holmes is just like, yeah, we're fighting vampires, but I'm going to add I'm going to apply some science to this mythology and get these bastards. It's also very old English speech. It's not like, yeah, we'll do this, yeah, we'll do that. It's more like they have very British literary terms, like, yes, we shall, and, oh, he ain't quite right in the head. It's very good. It's, I'm glad Ian Eddington kept with the times of writing this, instead of keeping, like, an MTV-era slang and shit like that. The other story involving which is actually the first thing you read, is Sherlock Holmes Sherlock Holmes and Watson trying to discover this murder of a child, which ties into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And what they do with Mr. Hyde is really interesting. They do investigate. There's this brutal murder of a child, and they think it's, again, what they call the zombies' revients. And they tie it into Dr. Jekyll. And of course they build it like a mystery, but again, they're dealing with Dr. Jekyll. I wonder who the culprit is. It's not, but here's the thing, it's not just Mr. Hyde, it's a zombie Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll's perfectly fine, but after he was bitten by a zombie, Hyde came out and and he became like this zombie version of Hyde. It's a nice little one-shot, but again, you kind of figure out, if you've ever read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you kind of figure it out. And also, they spoil the whole zombie Hyde at the beginning of the story, so I feel like that kind of hurt it a bit, but the mystery of it all is really interesting, and, yeah. But all in all, if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, and you really like that kind of Victorian goth-era kind of storytelling, I highly recommend getting this. This was really good, of telling the whole story, but again, it just feels, and I know they, Ian Eddington was unable to do more after, because this was under Wildstorm originally. This was under Wildstorm and put in trade by DC, because what happened was Wildstorm went under during the whole 52 reboot, so Eddington wasn't able to do the third story of Victorian Undead, and it clearly shows that he wanted to do more in this kind of trilogy. But once again, I highly recommend picking this up. This was really good. And the first one, even though I haven't read the first one, I hear really good things about it. Plus, it's Sherlock Holmes fighting zombies. You can't really fuck that up now, can you? But, yeah. Once again, highly recommend this, and hope you all enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys later.